Have it this way too. Awesome. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our live author talk. And tonight we are here with Hope Alcocer, author of Where Hope Lies. And I left my book over there and I have my earbuds in. So give me a second. Introduce yourself, Hope.
Hey everyone, I'm Hope. I've been a part of this TBI group for a couple of years now. It's helped me tremendously getting through some of my dark days. And Amy and I met a couple of years ago when my first book came out, this book, and we've been in touch ever since. So I'm excited to see her face to face after a couple of years now, 2 years. Where did time go?
Where does time go?
Where did the time go?
All right. Sorry, you guys all had to experience my butt sticking out in the air. All right. I got the book. So Hope and I connected, 2 or 3 years ago.
I literally was just talking about it while your butt was in there.
So Hope had reached out to me and sent me a copy of her book. And I literally, I think I read it in a day or in a 2-day weekend thing. I loved it. I thought it was so great. And I thought that our first 2 books in book club were both unintentionally NFL related. The first one was Cindy Fiesel's story of her late husband. And then the second one was Ben Utek. So I wanted to have something totally different. And so I thought your book would be perfect because it's fiction. I mean, it's loosely based on your real life, but it's fiction.
Right.
And it's just a lighthearted romantic comedy type book. So I don't know, where should we start? What prompted you to write this? What was for me, I didn't set out to write a book. I was just writing blog posts. So how did this come about for you?
Well, as you mentioned, a lot of the book is actually based on my real life. So many times when I would tell my story to people, they would say, "Oh, you should write a book." And I kind of just laughed it off. And then, as again, you mentioned it's based on, my events in my life. So when my now ex-fiance was overseas, I would write a blog. He did not know about it. And I would write to these other military girlfriends on Tumblr. And this blog grew tremendously and into 6,000 subscribers within, 6 months. And so I took the most popular pieces or blogs or articles on this website, and I used that as kind of the outline for this book. As I started writing it, amid seizures and fainting spells and migraines every single day for 14 months, trying to write this book, more events happened in my life that I thought, oh, man, this would be great to kind of do a spin on and add to the book. This book took nearly 4 or 5 years to actually write, and I definitely added to it along the way. If nothing else, I would mark this book as just the center of my healing, because once I published this book and got it out there, I was able to heal from many of the things I discuss in the book. It was I had to actually put it on paper, and then I was able to start healing. It's almost like burning something. If you have an ex-boyfriend's letters or something, and you set it on fire and you're like, oh, I feel better. Once I published this book, I started to actually heal.
Mm-hmm. And Hope, you yourself have had a traumatic brain injury. Would you give us a little bit of the background with that?
Sure. So I was actually given the wrong medication when I had pneumonia in 2005, and that resulted in a grand mal seizure and short-term memory loss. And because my balance was so challenged after this incident, I continually fell. I developed a fainting condition, continually would fall, hit my head, and this kind of contributed to a conglomerate of various concussions and brain issues. In the book, Chloe develops a brain injury from something different. It's from her drowning herself. And while that's not how I actually got my brain injury, I actually did struggle with suicide, depression, anxiety, and did try to drown myself. So thankfully, someone was there in time, and God was like, you're not done yet. But so I very much understand the struggles of brain injury. Again, that was in '05. This is now 2019, and I still deal with things every single day that are related to that. But yeah, it's groups like this that make you feel not so alone. Like, oh my God, I have that too. Me
Yeah.
too.
And I thought it was really interesting. So when I read the book, I did not know your personal story, but I knew that the book was loosely based off of
Right.
real life. And I knew that you did have a brain injury. And so I'm reading, I'm like, I wonder if this is really how she got her brain injury.
A lot of people were like, wait a minute. Wait, what really happened?
But the whole suicidal thoughts, people with brain injury are 10 times more likely to have suicidal ideations and 3 times more likely to complete it. And, I dealt with that, it's a symptom of the brain injury. It's not the root problem, but it's a symptom because we're not who we were. And, like you're dealing with migraines, and I dealt with a lot of physical pain and the fatigue and the memory loss. The short-term memory loss was just, when you're a high-functioning, multitasking, motivated, independent businesswoman, and then now you can't remember 2 seconds ago when you're trying to get work done. It's just,
My nickname in college was Dory, like the fish from Finding Nemo. Dory, I'm like, okay, this isn't really funny. I literally can't remember what you just said 10 minutes ago, but try to find humor in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just the whole going through college, even with the brain injury, that's something I didn't experience, but I can imagine that that's quite a struggle.
College is supposed to be some of the best years of your life. And I can say this a decade later, I feel old saying that. It was probably the worst years of my life because at that time, which it doesn't seem that far away, but actually 10 years ago, they weren't as accepting and understanding of learning disabilities.
Absolutely.
No one talked about left brain, right brain. No one talked about how visual learning can be better and like doing different projects versus, remembering test anxiety. Like no one really dove into that. It was very black and white. And so I had to repeat so many classes. I barely made it through, and that plagued even more depression on top of everything else I was already feeling. The world was not ready to handle a brain injury during that time.
And that's such a great point. 10 years ago wasn't that long ago. My brain injury has been 5. And I know even just since my brain injury, like the things we're learning, it's just profound. And people who had their injury 20 years ago, and so that gives me hope that 10 years from now, we'll know even so much more, right?
Totally. And to speak to that too, I got all the help I could have back during that time. Like I mentioned, there's some residual symptoms on a daily basis. And so my advice too for people is it's never too late to seek help or treatment. Last year, I went to Shirley Ryan Agility Lab right here by Northwestern's campus here in Chicago. And they said to me, like, it's never too late. And so I went through a whole summer of pain management. They did some rebalancing work. They put me through the post-concussion program. Even though it was a long time ago, they still fine-tune the things that I've been trying to learn, like trying to survive based on what, my learning tools and tactics I have. But they kind of added on to it. I was like, oh my God, 14 years later, I still get to learn new survival.
Can you give us the name of that clinic again?
Sure. It's Shirley Ryan Ability Lab.
Okay.
And they have a couple different campuses. If you're in Chicago, Northwestern's neurology department, they saved me. Like I've had so many different doctors since '05. Oh, this is the problem. This is the problem. Here's my diagnosis. Northwestern did not stop until we had an actual healing map of what is the next year going to look like, what are 2-3 years down the line going to look like, and they're still helping me. And their psychology department is incredible as well because, as you know, the mental health struggle of a brain injury, I would argue it's sometimes even greater than the physical scars that you wear.
Absolutely. And so that brings me to my next question with Chloe.
Yes.
Chloe clearly had some emotional instability. And would you say that that was coming from within you? Were you projecting some of yourself into Chloe with that? Or was that more Chloe? And was that, you already said, it was therapy to write the book. So was maybe that partly your way of releasing some of that and letting it go?
For sure. Well, now that it's, 2.5 years later, so Chloe Rapaco, that first and last name, that's Hope Alcocer all mixed up. So just a side little fun fact. But absolutely, everything she's thinking and feeling,
An
and
anagram?
that sounds about right.
I
We can
think
say
that's
that.
right.
We can say that's what it is.
Say that's right.
Sounds about right. Everything she's thinking and feeling is what I was feeling during that time. And again, it was so therapeutic to just kind of close my eyes and go within myself and recall those moments, no matter how painful they were, and remember the feelings and put them down on paper. And it was a way of me expressing it to the people that had, wronged me or hurt me in a way that was kind of safe behind a fictitious name. And I didn't know that later on I would go on to actually speak out, under my real name, but it was very healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you glad you wrote it under your real name?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It had a lot of backlash, from people in my hometown, people all over the, everyone has an opinion.
Yeah.
Opinions are like, buttholes. Everyone has them, right? So, trying to filter this best I can.
Well said.
Yeah. So, everyone has their opinion. I don't regret it because so many women wrote and said, brain injury or not, so many women wrote and said, oh my God, I felt that. I've been in an abusive relationship. I've been in a toxic relationship. You are saying exactly what I'm feeling. How did you get out of it? And then I would be able to have this private side conversation with them on, abuse and how to leave a relationship or mental health issues or, so it was just a blessing. It was, I felt honored to be able to speak to women the last couple of years on these issues that they struggle with.
Yeah. And I definitely, there was parts of Chloe that I totally related to, and especially when we're younger, when we're in our early 20s, mid 20s, we get sucked into those relationships that maybe aren't the healthiest, but we don't know any better. That's how we learn and how we grow. So, yeah.
And then even, with a brain injury, at least I've been told, your impulse control changes. Your reality can kind of change. Your emotions, it's very hard to regulate them. And so that has contributed to my tumultuous, disruptive relationships. And I'm working really hard to kind of break that cycle. We tend to not always think before we do or act or choose. We are very emotional people. We wear our hearts on our sleeves, and it's kind of filtering that to make sure that you're not, you don't get further heartache.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question and now I lost it.
Sorry,
I was thinking too hard. I know what I was going to ask. How old were you when you had your brain injury?
I was 17.
Okay, so you were still high school.
Yes, it was 2 weeks before we were supposed to take the ACT test.
Oh.
And I was a 4.0 student, and I came back to school. I did not remember anything on the practice guide, and I remember just like in the depths of despair, like what is going to happen. I graduated with, I think it was a 3.75 or something of that, but to go from a 4.0 to that in your last year of school was really rough.
Yeah. And before we started recording, we were talking about school and accommodations, or were we recording? I don't remember now.
Hashtag brain injury. Yes, we was while we were recording.
But they didn't have accommodations. Like they didn't know anything. And, I met a girl just a couple of years ago. She was, I think, a sophomore in high school when she had her brain injury. She fell off of a hammock and fell in. Total random freak thing at home. She went from being a 4.0 honor student to like failing, and they held her back a year. And I'm like, no one in high school should ever be held back a year. Like,
I agree.
They wouldn't give her accommodations because they said that was cheating. And, Bobby's had a concussion and Bobby doesn't need accommodations. And it's like, no two brain injuries are the same. And Bobby maybe wasn't a 4.0 student, know, so that was just like 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, she just graduated. So, it's really frustrating. And
you need to advocate for yourself. Any accommodations I received my mom's an occupational therapist, so she was my advocate and she fought as hard as she could. But even then, they'd be like, well, we'll give you an extra 15 minutes on a test. Well, what good does that do when I don't recall what I learned? Or, when I'm if you have me write a paper or you have me do some sort of visual presentation, I will ace it. But there's certain types of tests that you just can't seem to crack when you have a brain injury.
Yeah. If anyone, I know there's a few of you watching in the Facebook group. If anyone has any questions, you can write them in the comments. I'm just refreshing my page here. Hi, Frank. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Chrissy. So we're here again with Hope Alcocer, author of Where Hope Lies. And I honestly, I read this so quickly. And this was even when I still had trouble reading. So that's how much I enjoyed your book.
Thanks,
I remember reading it in the bathtub in my apartment. I had this amazing soaking tub, and I would sit in the bathtub and read my book. So it's got a little water damage on the edges, but that's when you know it's a good book.
Yeah, it gives it some character. I love it.
So, Chloe, have you ever thought of writing a continuation of where she is now?
So many people have asked me that. I don't know. I wrote 2 books in 2 years. I'm still a little burnt out. We'll see. I now write under not Chloe's name, just under Hope on my Medium channel. I've started getting back into that. But I'm wondering, because a lot has happened since then, a lot of crazy stuff. So we'll see. It's still up in the air.
I kind of I'm a little jealous because you have a fictitious character that you can continue writing about. Chloe can go a lot of directions, right?
Yeah. It's like an alter ego.
Exactly. I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
And so you wrote a second book, and it's 30 Before 30?
30 Things Before 30, yeah. I released it on my 30th birthday last year, and I didn't do the best marketing on this one because everyone's like, oh, it's a list of 30 things I should do before I turn 30. Like, no. I didn't realize how many books there are out called turning 30 Things Before 30.
Right.
But each chapter, there's 30 chapters, shocker, and each chapter is a lesson I learned the really hard way. And it's written as though I'm talking to you in first person, or, it's raw, it's emotional, a little bit risque. My mom hasn't read all of it. Won't give my grandma a copy. But I really enjoyed reading that one, or not reading. I mean, I did read it, writing it. And I'm looking forward to sharing the story again this fall. Some college campuses across the country. I get to speak at Harvard in November, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
My second book, there's a chapter on sex after brain injury, and it's not super. It's definitely graphic, but not graphic, right? It's not porn. But I remember giving my parents the copy of the book, and then I drove home, and I'm literally putting the key in the lock of my door, and I went,
Oh no, didn't pull that out, didn't rip that out.
What do you do? Oh, funny. So in writing this book, is there anything you wish you had done differently, or wish you had known?
Yeah, so I think we did talk about this before we went live. I wrote this book when I was having many seizures literally every day for 14 months, like I mentioned. I had migraines for countless years, just debilitating pain. My speech was affected, my vision was affected, and I was still writing this book. So I definitely see that when I reread the book, like the quality, kind of the cognitive ability when I first wrote this book. Yes, it had an editor, had 2 editors, but I had such a low budget at the time. I look back, I'm like, I should have waited to put it out till I had more funds to really properly edit it. But kind of hindsight's 2020. And then the second piece to that, to self-publishing, is unless you have the budget to edit it or work with someone to help you write it, just wait, because the comments, the reviews, everything, they could have been, a lot of them could have been spared had I just waited a little bit and produced more of a more quality book. I think the second book did really well, didn't have as many of those complaints, so I definitely learned. But I got to give myself some leeway, because I was in such turmoil when I wrote this book. So I guess it's a product of my pain, but that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like I was saying when I wrote my book, or when I wrote the blog posts, that was in real time and what I was feeling. And I'm so glad I kind of have that to look back at, because, now that I've moved so far beyond that, especially that first year and a half was so hard. And I read it now and I'm like, wow, I really was struggling. So, I mean, I think it's kind of cool to have that to be able to look at and know you've come from that. So
I wished it wasn't like available for people's public opinions during like that time. Like, oh shoot, tell me something I don't know. But someone told me a long time ago, don't read the comments, don't read the reviews. It's kind of hard to do not to.
It is hard not to.
It's like roadkill. You kind of like have to look at it.
I know.
But it's definitely been a growing experience, and I'm just really thankful. It opened so many opportunities the last couple of years. I've just been really blessed with it.
Yeah. And that's a lesson for anyone. Like, I know I get the most random emails and the most random comments and messages, and sometimes they're really mean. And, people with brain injuries, they don't have filters. They lack self-control and self-awareness. So, just think a little before you speak, so to speak, type.
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, because, I've had some weird reviews on my books too, like, this book is all about her. Well, yeah.
I wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my book. It's about my journey.
Right.
So they gave me like a 2-star. I'm like, okay. But yeah, but that's a segue into my next point. One thing that really helps authors is a 5-star review on Amazon. If you've read it, you don't have to have purchased it on Amazon, but you do need an Amazon account to leave a review on a book. So if you do feel like giving Hope 5 stars, that really does help people find her book on Amazon. So I'll put a link again in the Facebook group for you guys. So Hope, any final parting thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't really related to the book. It's more about just recovery of the brain injury. I keep learning this. Healing is not linear. I went through some stuff the last couple months that I was like, I thought I was done with this. And it's okay. It's just up and down. Love on yourself, give yourself that room to grow, seek community. Right now I'm in a group therapy program for people with mood disorders, and it's been just life-changing to just sit there, and everyone has a different walk, everyone has a different illness. It's never too late to adjust. It's never too late to seek help, community. You're not alone in this at all. I can't believe how many people struggle with this. It's a family. We're a family.
And, that's why I'm so passionate with everything I do, because I couldn't find the resources early enough, and I consider myself pretty intelligent and able-bodied, and I did not have the bandwidth to find resources. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to help others get those resources sooner.
Yeah, you've been a godsend to me. Sorry for the noise in the background. You've been a godsend to me, and I really appreciate everything you do.
Aw. Well, thank you so much for being part of the book club. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time. And I know you have to go catch a train.
Yes. Go.
Hope is on the go. So it's been such a pleasure getting to know you, and I love watching everything you're up to, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be part of our book club.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for watching.
Have a good night.
Bye everyone.